It has been a week since we first arrived in the bustling downtown area of Chicago. This experience is entirely different from the last place. The last place there were dangers all around, and I had to trust God to keep us safe, just like how He protected baby Moses among the papyrus reeds that were full of crocodiles. However, this new place is a whole new world. It has been safe to walk around even at night, and we are in an area that is super nice with beautiful shops and towering buildings. With each step following God, He always stretches me beyond my comfort zone and asks me to believe in the impossible to be done, and it never looks possible. In this new area, there are no more gunshots, and my car has been in a place that has security 24/7. The dangers that I am facing now are quite different. All of God's promises to support us have been thrown into the refining fire, and I have had to believe in His promises of support for the room, for the food, and to have our car paid, even when it seems completely impossible. A while back, God told me that He would take me to a place so big that it would seem scary, like wearing shoes that I need to grow into. The dangers at this time is dangers of surviving financially. I have had times when the fear of it all closes in on me, and I have to go back to a sweet escape technique that the Lord taught me several years ago. I was in a similar situation. It was my first time going to a big city on this journey with God in Detroit, Michigan. And Detroit had a terrible reputation where I came from, and it was the one place I begged God to never take me. Yet it was one fear that God wanted me to confront by exposure so that the fear could be replaced with God's love to keep us safe. The Lord put us in a similar type of situation, a beautiful place in a big city building that seemed too big for what I thought I could afford. It had amazing views of the skyline lit up with glittering lights, and a sun deck on the roof that offered views that nearly touched the clouds. The stakes were even higher then because I didn't have a car at all, and the Lord didn't provide me with a way to get a rental car during the majority of the stay, only in the beginning and once in the middle to run needed errands. My fear of being stranded in that big city with no car and no home and no income aside from my promise was terrifying. God had told me a few months before we got there that my feet were in the fire for room money, and He told me to use the way of escape. He told me that I was in danger of setting my situation on fire from the thoughts of fear, which is also pain. Fear is described in the Bible as a form of torment, and that is what it is. To be suffocating from fear on all sides is like being in a burning building with no way to survive. Many times during the journey, God would show me when I was in danger of setting my situation on fire and losing the fulfillment of promise by entertaining fearful thoughts. He showed me that thinking about bad outcomes or worries was like smoking cigarettes and taking the risk of catching the house on fire. It is a dangerous thing to do when your life depends on faith and God's promises to come through. It's like fear releases the fire of getting burnt, but faith releases the water of refreshment. God says that thinking about fearful things happening is like how a pig can kill her own babies after giving birth because of the pain of farrowing, agitation, or not being able to settle down. That behavior is called savaging, and the pig ends up consumed by so much pain and irritation that she murders the baby that she had worked so hard to grow inside for so long. The way that they protect the baby from getting savaged is to separate the baby from the mother right after birth, to allow the mother to come back to peace and to calm down from the pain. The same is true when we consume fearful thoughts or worries during a time of birthing a fulfilled promise. By opening ourselves to think bad things, we risk killing our promises from God and bringing those bad, feared outcomes upon ourselves. As God was teaching me this, so that I didn't kill my own promises and bring bad things upon myself, He told me to get away like an escape. Escapism is what many who are dependent on drugs or games do to escape the pain of their situation. It can be good or bad. It is a way to find peace when everything hurts beyond words, when everything's terrifying, when you can't change your situation, so you look for a way to escape and get away mentally. There are healthy forms of escapism and obviously unhealthy ones as well, like consuming substances that can hurt your body. The escapism that God taught me was harnessing all my emotions and senses into imagining the fulfillment that I hoped for had already happened. It was a way to soar over the rainbow and enter the promise even before it came. God covered our room and our car garage for this next week, but I've had to press my faith into a place of escape for our food needs. The city is beautiful, but all the people and noises have been irritating to me with anxiety. But I found that escaping into my promises cured it all. The past few days I put on my earbuds and listened to my activation audio recordings as I walked. Instead of feeling the tense and fearful from the environment and the needs that we had for groceries or room or car, I found myself practically dancing as I walked along. I would walk through the crowded streets so completely absorbed in the faith imagination encounters that I recorded that it felt like I had already had all of our needs provided. If you are curious, they are for sale on my website at diamondsfromthedust.com. I have 3 so far. They're like 10, 12 minutes long. There's one called Activated Abundance, one called Love Support, and then the Transformational Hope Soak from the Hope Repose course. Escaping the pain of bad things happening mentally took my pain away and helped me to enter into the identity of who God promised I would be. As I listen, I can practically see every detail of how God promised that I would be as my reality. When God took us to Detroit and it looked like I would be stranded without a home or car, God did the impossible. He sent us the money to leave the city and get a new Airbnb back home, and even supplied us with a car just in time so that we are not stranded with no way to go. This experience is even bigger. The dangers are similar, but with different circumstances. Now I'm having to use my faith to trust God to pay for this room that feels too big for me, the car parking and the car payment and the food. God will show me little signs along the way to show me when something is coming. He also coaches me about how to engage my faith and how to avoid the dangers of setting my promises up in flames. I see myself buying the food needs, paying for the room, paying to cover my parking. It takes me from being in pain, from the fear of how impossible it looks to survive, to feeling total joy from God's love vows being fulfilled. One of the wounds that God has been taking me back through to heal during this time came from when we barely had any food money to get by. And I had a promise from God that we would always eat well, but He said it would happen when I believed it. Going through that time was so terrifying. Then I had found myself in a panic when there looks like there's not going to be anything to cover food. There were times when God let us get down to just a protein bar for each of us, because before the promise of grocery money would come in. It was so scary because I couldn't even imagine if my daughter were being hungry. Just the thought of it had me falling on my face in bitter tears. I had to trust God with all of my heart, and that includes the people who are so precious to my heart. I had to lay them all upon the altar. Sometimes it felt like Abraham laying his son on the altar and trusting God not to hurt him. And that's what it felt like inside, to lay my family on the altar as I trusted God, and I had to choose to obey Him rather than my fears or all the other underlying situations going on. I had to trust God with those that I love more than myself. Following God into this journey to tangible promises is not easy. But after every moment of facing fear of not being supported, God shows up with the comforts to bless us with extra. Last night I walked through the city streets doing my faith escape into fulfillment, and I had been imagining that God sent what we needed for the week. It seemed terrifying because there was no visible appearance of anything coming. And I just had to believe in what God promised. He said that He would be our home and supply our needs, especially the food. I did the same thing when we were in Detroit. But during that time, my promise of not being stranded or not having a home was pressing me all around. One thing that comforted me more than anything during that time was God's promise that the opposite of my fears would be done. When I look at my situation and how impossible and even crazy it looks, it is like looking down from a high building and feeling sick in my belly. But when I look at all that God has carried us through, how faithful He's been, and all that He promised to do, then I feel calm, peaceful, and full of joy. He's saved my life more times than I can count. He's fulfilled more promises that I can even document. He's been amazing and wonderful and such a good counselor. Last night, God asked me to share this because there are some people who need to escape the pain to protect their baby, their promises. It is the escape of seeing their situation into the way that God promised and not how it feels or looks. Being at peace and staying calm while birthing can completely take all the pain of giving birth away. I read a story about a midwife who made herself do relaxation techniques all through her birth. She escaped the pain by not giving into it, and afterwards she said that her birth experience was a dream. She had no pain because she was able to relax completely throughout her entire being. I can't even imagine being able to enter that kind of peace and relaxation. But it is something that I definitely am working towards. I have even heard that those who break bricks with their hands in karate have a special way to take away the pain of it. Instead of looking at the brick and the pain of what their hand will have to go through, they look beyond and see their hand already through the brick with the brick broken in two. Since pain is mental more than anything else, those who practice such amazing feats of breaking bricks with a single move of their hand have no pain from it because they see the end result and not the pain of going through it. Fear is a form of pain in the mind, and it is an illusion when you have a promise from God. God will protect us from the fears coming true when we lean into Him and abide in the promises already done. Pain, also fear, can make us forget the promises that God had us fall in love with in the beginning. That is why it's important to escape the pain by keeping your eyes, thoughts, imagination, and awareness on the promise, as though it was already delivered into your arms. There are promises that are about to come out for you, and the indication of fear, pain, and pressure is a sign that it will happen at any moment for you. The pressure is an indication of the release and the proof that the miracle birth is at hand. If you are starting to feel the intensity of the pressure of your situation, just know that it means that it is time for your baby to arrive. God will turn it all around. A promise never looks like it's going to come out. It's like a baby inside. You cannot see it until the moment it shows up from the inside out. This moment is so much bigger than you realize. I love you dearly. This is Dannette from Diamonds from the Dust.